Grimmy, Arturo el Lobote, Lyrical, Neta del NC, MP Record.
This is a remix. Quiere hacer el manito lo que yo hago y quiere tener en esta vuelta.
Welcome back to the Womanhood Lectures. I'm Yasmin.
And I'm Lyra. Please take a moment, like, subscribe, and share to our channel.
Lyra, I have been noticing lately, and I'm kind of sad. It's kind of a sad story. I have a friend who's going through a divorce right now. She's one of a few, and it's one of those things that just kind of came to my mind as I was looking through all my friendships, what people are going through these days, and divorce. Not to say that people don't realize that it's on the rise, but it's really getting difficult.
It is. Yes.
It's such a hard thing for people to go through. Just thinking about, you're married, your whole life is intertwined, and then you're trying to extricate all of that and become sort of like two separate entities again, particularly when you have kids.
Right.
I can speak from my own experience as being a child of divorce. It's not pretty.
No.
Like, it does not matter how careful you are, how kind you try to be, how compassionate you try to be, patient with each other. It's always messy. It's all like there's always going to be a load of hurt, and particularly for the kids involved. I was just really noticing how difficult it is for women who are trying to start over again, and it's everything. It's moving your family apart. It's physically trying to find a place to stay, or maybe staying in your marital home, and then your husband has to move out, and starting your life over after 40, not an easy thing.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, I want you to rewind on that.
Yeah.
Because I do the real estate aspect of divorce as well.
Yeah.
Prior to separating your things and separating your children and figuring out where you're going to live, there's actually the separation of assets and all of those things that come into play, whether it be investments, pensions. There's a huge fight that's typically involved. And I've seen it firsthand, and it can be quite painful to watch from the outside looking in. Being on the inside, I'm sure, is like 10 times worse. But as I see it, I see that there's usually a ton of anger.
Oh, yeah.
A ton of anger between two people that originally were married and in love, and obviously trying to work together towards building that committed relationship. And then things fall apart, and then the house goes on sale, and I'm the person that, handles that aspect of it. And I watch two people like literally destroy each other during that process. And sometimes it's amicable, and sometimes it works out really well and everyone's good and, everyone agrees. But most often it's disagreements in the process and trying to figure out what is what and whose is whose. And then I've seen the worst case scenario that I've seen is two people fight so much with each other. And then when it comes to actually separating and there's children involved, it gets to the point where all the money's in trust and they've spent all of their money on lawyers, and they walk away with very little because they're just so angry with each other and they can't be amicable during the process. Right?
Well, then you're not thinking straight, right? You're really looking at in that process when it gets to be that bad. You're just not thinking straight at that point. All you're thinking about is, I just want to win. I want to be right. I want to justify all my hurt and resentment, and I'm going to funnel it into this fight that we have.
Right.
And money's a really easy thing for you guys to fight against. Unless you're J-Lo, of course. And you have
lots of money.
Tons of money, so you can just get married like every other year. But I mean, I say that, she's probably a very famous divorce going on right now.
Right.
It's crazy. They did not sign a prenup because I believe, and she said, like, they really thought that this was going to be it. So they did not go there. They did not sign a prenup. And between the two of them, like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a lot of money, obviously, your problems get bigger.
Right.
Right. So, and they're both famous. So, Bennifer is going to be no more for those of you who love Bennifer. But they have a history too. I mean, but she also has a history with how many marriages and relationships that she's had. And as much as some people can, and I mean, she even came out with a whole movie about it.
Yeah,
and
about
a documentary
finding herself,
about
right?
finding herself.
Yeah.
And I thought that is really the crux to me of what women are facing when they are going through breakups and divorce.
Right.
And it's this whole journey and this whole process of coming back into yourself and kind of reclaiming yourself and starting to learn how to love yourself and get to know yourself. And I think in her case, she's a really good example of someone who never took the time to actually be with herself in between her relationships.
Right.
Right. And I always believe that relationships are a process by which you get a reflection from someone and you get to know yourself better.
Right.
And if you don't take those lessons and actually apply them to your life, you're going to get into the same relationship issues. And you're going
Over
to
and
keep,
over again.
you're
Yes.
just going to keep playing that same old record because you're not learning from that first experience or the second experience or the third experience. In her case, 4 marriages.
Right.
And a couple of serious relationships in between. So probably like 7.
I think Drake was serious, right?
Drake was a year.
I think
I don't know
so.
how serious was that. Mind you, I mean, Chris Judd was only a year. So I'm going to give you a rundown. So let's just imagine that she's a typical woman. She's a little bit maybe out of the box, but there's a lot of women. I know women who've been married, 3-4 times. It's a little wild, right? So she started Ojani Noah was her first husband, and that he was the producer of Selena. So the first big movie that she was in. 1 year, 1997 to 98. Then she started dating infamous P. Diddy, 1999 to 2001. And then she married Chris Judd, who was a backup dancer on one of her videos, and that was 2001 to 2002. So you're seeing like a year. Then she meets Ben Affleck. She, dates him for about 2 years. They didn't get married at that time. Or did they get married the first time? I can't remember.
The backup dancer?
No, Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck. Yeah, they did get married, I think.
So this was their second marriage? I
think
can't
so.
remember. Anyways, no, I think they were going to get married.
Oh,
and then they broke
called it
up.
off.
They
I don't
called it
know.
off. Yes, I think
I'm not like, honestly, I'm terrible at this just
I
simply because
know.
I don't, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Not a fan of JLo, just
Right.
in general. I don't make myself a fan of these celebrities.
Right. So I know, following their personal lives is
personal
like,
life
I have
is like-
to look up what just
I'm like,
happened.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
Google it later.
So that was a 2-year relationship and broken engagement, I believe.
Okay.
So. Then right away, 2004 to 2011, she breaks up with Ben, gets into a relationship with Mark Anthony, and gets married. Just
Right
like that.
away, yeah.
But then they have kids together. So see, this is her longest relationship that I can see because she had kids. She had kids with him. So you kind of have to stay together for a period of time to raise those
What
children.
was the length of time?
So 2004 to 11, so 7 years. 7
Longest marriage.
years.
I know.
Oh my gosh, 7-year itch. I don't know. But, I mean, people talk about that, right? And then look at this. She dates Casper Smart. I think he was another backup dancer of hers. From 2011 to 2016. So that was a few years, actually. But I don't think she was married to him. Casper Smart. No, I think he was a relationship, not a
Okay.
marriage. And then Drake, 2016. So that was about a year. I think that was a pretty intense relationship on his end. I don't know about her. And then A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, famous baseball player.
Yes.
That was 2017 to 2021. They were actually really cute together.
They were.
I did
I
see a
wanted
lot
that
of
to work,
kind of
actually.
potential. I think
Yeah.
they would have been a really good match. But
They're
whatever
both
happened
very.
at the end.
They're both very
Yeah.
committed,
Yeah.
growth-oriented
They
individuals.
are,
right?
they are,
Yeah.
and they both had kids, and so they had
Right.
blended their families
Right.
already, but they didn't get married. I think they broke off that engagement at the end, so that was kind of sad. And then back to Ben Affleck.
Bennifer.
And so that's been the last 2 years, 2022 to 2024. You can just see that there's this process of like dating or marriage or like always needing to be with somebody. And I don't think she ever gave herself any breathing room. And I think that's what I see with a lot of women is they don't take the time to really give themselves the breathing room to be with themselves. And
Yes.
it's hard. It's so hard. Like, I'm not saying that it's easy, because I've seen friends go through this. That first year, 2 years, I don't know, however long it takes.
Right.
You are literally wallowing in the shit because you are alone after being with somebody for however long. And you need that time to actually come back into yourself, figure out who you are now after this relationship. What have I learned? What do I want? And then you've also grown, and maybe you've had kids, and it's a whole new adjustment to who you are, right? And what do I like now? What type of people do I even want to hang out with now?
Right.
So it's really such a big change. And I think for women, especially trying to, get back into the dating scene, it gets really difficult because, first marriages end in divorce. I think the divorce rate is about 43% in the U.S., probably very similar.
I believe that it's 50 now.
Is it 50
Yeah,
now? It's
50.
probably up.
It's up. It had stopped for a little bit during the pandemic because people weren't able to actually physically go and get a divorce.
Oh my gosh, I know someone who had to live in the same house during the pandemic as they were going through a separation.
It's tough.
No.
Right. Cohabitating is definitely tough.
Terrible.
But I know that during that time, marriages were not happening. So the marriage rate dropped.
True.
As well as the divorce rate dropped during that period of time.
Yeah.
But then as soon as that was over and you were able to get divorced, divorce rates skyrocketed.
There was a huge backlog.
Marriages kind of stayed the same almost.
Oh,
we're seeing actually less marriages right now because a lot of women are opting to not be married. A lot of men are really, having a difficult time. Relationships in general are getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
Because I asked you before we sat down, I said, what is marriage? Right?
Yeah. And I said, the first thing that came to mind was commitment.
A commitment.
It is a mutual commitment.
Right. And I said, for how long?
And I was like, what do you mean? Forever?
For how long? Forever.
That's
you make that, right?
You make that decision and you make that
it's
choice.
Forever.
Yeah.
And I'm not an advocate for divorce, nor am I an advocate for someone to stay together either with somebody who you may not, jive with for years to come. I do believe that you should pursue your own happiness and live your best life. That's my own opinion. But I think that we, in everything that you listed there for JLo, I think she's a terrible example for what?
For relationships?
For relationships or long-term relationships. I mean, we idolize her. And if you kind of look at JLo online, like there's a lot of people who are just like so in love with her because she's a talented individual for sure, right?
For sure.
So you can say she's a talented individual. And obviously her whole love life is on display. I'm sure if I was married that often and dated, no one would really give a damn. I would just have to live with the fact that I probably have commitment issues. And
maybe.
Nobody really thinks about the children. So I say that because 50% of children now are products or dealing with parents who are divorcing. So that right there is an example of her blending her family, I think 2 times, as mentioned, like Ben Affleck's kids, A-Rod's kids. I think, 3 times. I believe that Mark Anthony also had a previous marriage with children too.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
So, blending your kids, tearing them apart, blending them, you know what I mean? Like I would say that it's very dysfunctional to live like that, right? To make that choice.
Do you have friends or people that you know who have gone through divorce or separations in the last little while?
Several, lots of women. And as mentioned on previous podcasts that we did, it's usually uncommunicated expectations.
And it's usually women that are starting to opt for this versus men opting.
I think women want to try. I've noticed that in the conversations I'm having. I was sitting in a coffee shop with a divorcee. I'm still married 18 years, right? So I'm chatting with her, and then I think about 2 other women came by, said hi, did the wave, and they were also divorced. So I was like, wow, like there's, a lot of women that are divorced.
So what's the common thing that you're seeing in terms of their marital breakdown? Like what are some of the common things that you're hearing from people?
What I'm hearing is, my husband's dead.
Ooh. Okay.
Like life is
not,
like it's just
just
dead.
Boring?
Like it's boring. It's dead. Like there's no life in them. They don't want to, change. They don't want to improve. They don't want to help. They don't want to meet halfway. And the conversations that women are having with men is, hey, I need an emotional connection. I need commitment. I need this. And all those women that I'm talking about have tried. Have sought out therapy, have, registered for books that they can read together with their husband. They've tried, like they've genuinely given their all to be like, I need to work on this. This is my partnership. This is my marriage. We have children together.
So they acknowledge that they need to work on stuff.
They acknowledge
too,
that they
right?
did, right, during the marriage. And then it just fell apart because most often in those cases, like, again, there's always two sides to every story. So I'm listening to just the one side. Most often the case is that the woman has tried, the husband's just not interested.
Not so interested. Or maybe not seeing that it's as much of a problem. As she is seeing.
Yes, the woman's seeing more of a problem than the man is. And the man's like,
perhaps.
why can't you accept me the way that I am? I am a man. The woman's like, well, I'm a woman and these are all my needs. Yeah.
Interesting enough, so the women that I have spoken to, like sort of my circle of friends and extended friends, one of the things that I notice they say a lot is, I started to feel like he was another child in the house and that I was becoming his caretaker and his caregiver versus a partner.
Right.
And it's so, like, I think that's actually so common. It's so easy to fall in that trap because especially if you have kids, you're tending to people all the time. So it's easy to start tending to your husband in that way. And I know this is kind of a fine line. It's like we've talked about before how you want to be someone who's going to maybe play that role of taking care of him emotionally, making dinner, like that sort of thing. Of course,
yeah.
But you also don't want to become his mother.
No.
Like, that's not romantic. That's not sexy.
Right.
I'm not interested in that, right? And so I think that's where that line gets crossed, where women start to become their partner's mothers, pseudo-mothers, and they're taking on too much responsibility and not actually asking for, well, in your case, in our case, like sometimes, yes, they're asking for the help, but it's like you've already set up this baseline of all the things that you do. Right? You take care of all of the emotional and mental and planning aspect of the family. Most women do this, right?
They've enabled their husbands.
And they've enabled their husbands along the way. And then they try to backtrack because then they come out of, so I'll give you myself as an example. For example, like with my kids, you spend the first 10 years just immersed in mothering and motherhood, and you do so much in the family, and you don't realize all the things that you've taken on along the way, right? And then 10 years later, I'm coming up for air going, wait a second, hold on. I need you to do this now, and I need you to do this now. And so it's a hard thing to kind of change how you run your family and how you interact with your partner.
Right.
It can be done, right? There's a lot of negotiation and it's not fun because no human being is going to suddenly backtrack and be like, sure, I want to do, more. Of course I want to do. No, if someone was waiting on me hand and foot, as a human being, I'd be like, I would have some resist. I like this. This is really comfortable. And I would have some internal, like subconscious resistance to giving that up. Anyone would. That's normal. That's normal human behavior. So I think that, as a woman, you need to, when you come up for air, whenever that is, that's when your work begins. That's when you really, like, if you want to make that relationship work, that's when you really need to start exerting yourself a little bit more and talking about what you need and actually being an example. So, for example, I know this is going to sound funny. There was this one point when I was just so sick and tired of, like, dishes in the sink, for example. So I'm like, I'm just not going to do them. I'm just not going to do these dishes for the week. These people, these heathens in my household, no, they just let it pile up for a week. And then people just started eating out of dishes in the fridge. I'm like, this is not working. So I tried it with laundry. I tried it with socks. I'm like, I'm just going on strike. It doesn't work. Strike didn't work in my household. Maybe it will work in your household, and then eventually I just said, I need to just start telling people. Like I'm like, this is kind of a passive aggressive way of working. So I need to just own up to, like, guys, you need to do this, and guys, you need to do that, and you need to help me out with XYZ. So I mean, that's just my situation. But I think a lot of women go through this phase of they're trying so many different things. And really, I think they need to just start changing themselves. Yeah. And then putting themselves forward. Yep. Right? Putting those boundaries in place. And it takes time. It takes time. It takes time and to switch.
I would say, I think, something that I mentioned, you can't really find yourself when you're in a marriage to some degree and have, like, a proper marriage. You know what I mean? Okay. Because, well, you can, but would you lose the connection with your partner at the end of the day?
Yeah, you might.
That's a good question, right?
Who knows?
So let's just say you move on and you're like, you know what, I'm going to move on from my marriage. I would say the best advice I would give is just don't get into any serious relationships for a while. Spend the time getting to know yourself again. Like, I've been married for 18 years, so I would definitely need to have like maybe 2 or 3 years where I'm just by myself.
Yes.
I don't want to be responsible for anybody's laundry. I don't want to be responsible for cooking, cleaning, nothing for anybody else. I want to just kind of do me. And I think
and being responsible for other people's emotional needs. Like,
exactly.
there's a lot that goes on
Processing
that you're thinking about.
Exactly. Because the rate of divorces on the second marriage is also very high.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like, what, 60%
So it's
or something?
J-Lo is a really prime example of that, is that it's even higher the second time around. And if
Higher
you
the
don't
third
take that
time.
break to say, you know what, I'm going to get to know myself, figure out exactly what my expectations are, set the precedence for what my expectations are with my future partner, and really take it seriously. Because I don't think we live in a society where we're taking marriage seriously. Is it that commitment forever?
Yeah.
That is the part of the vows that you make, is that it
Right.
is
And if that's,
something that you stick
again, no judgment on that. When things break down, they break down.
for sure, 100%.
I'm not saying to stay somewhere where you absolutely just, you don't see that there's any end to it. It's not gonna change, or the person's abusive or whatever. Those are obviously no.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of it is a mindset, and a lot of it is, do I want to stay in this relationship? Do I want to find ways to reconnect and make it work for me? Right? It's
Exactly.
not even about what do other people see and what is the gold standard of, there is no gold standard of a relationship or marriage at all. There is what is working for you, and can the two of you find something where you're both getting a valuable relationship.
Right.
It's moving you forward.
So what would you
Right.
say are like the benefits of a marriage? Because right now we're
Well, we are talking about divorce, but
Right?
I'm just saying, I agree with you. I think that women need to spend more time getting to know themselves.
Yes.
And you can do that in a relationship when you're involved with someone, when you're married. You can.
when you're with the right person who will allow you to do that.
It's
you
not
know?
easy, but you can. You can. You need to take that time for self-care, for time with other people, with your girlfriends, maybe with your family, outside of the marriage, and just get to know who you are.
Yes.
And then when you come back to your partner, you have to communicate that to them. I realize that this is how I am. I realize that there's certain things about myself. Like, does that fit with what we want out of this relationship? Even just talking about, what do you want out of your marriage and relationship? How do you both want to feel? And a lot of men will probably say, I don't know, I'm good, I'm happy. But sometimes you never know. You never know what your partner is going to come up with and say, actually, thanks for bringing that up. I actually wanted to talk about XYZ, or this has been on my mind, or I don't like it when you do that, and the thing is, again, it comes back to communication. It's not about pointing out, I don't like you because of XYZ. I don't like how I feel when this happens.
Yeah.
It's always about you.
And drop the ego. Like I notice just in my work with clients and then certain situations and relationships, drop the ego.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have an ego with your partner. You know what I mean? If both people have egos, you can't really come to a point where you're communicating effectively what your needs are. So dropping that, I think, is really important. But a lot of people don't. And I've seen like the outcome of that.
Well, it's
and
this like I need to be right. I need to be right. I need to be, justified in how I'm acting or how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And so that's what's driving all of that kind of behavior, I think. And
Yes.
it is hard to drop your ego because you're automatically in this defensive mode.
Yeah.
When
so is it
someone's
more
going
important
to
be right, or is it more important to be?
Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? I know I've said that to you
Exactly.
before,
You
and
said
you're
that.
just like,
I
I want
love
to
it.
punch you in the face. And you're right.
But I'm always right. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am always right. No.
Most of us are.
No.
But yeah, I think a lot of it. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Just drop the ego. Figure out what is it that you really want. At the end of the day, most humans just want connection.
Yes.
Both men and women. We just want to
Connection.
be able to connect.
Men too. Men do want that as well.
I just want to feel like you've got my back, you understand me, and you're trying your best. I want to know that you actually care.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate that to each other? And maybe the way that you show me isn't a way that I receive very well.
Yeah.
And so that's something I should know. If you like back rubs or foot rubs, no foot rubs for me. If you like back rubs, then tell your partner, I just really like
Yes.
it. That's how I feel connected to you, is through touch and through like cuddling and through whatever.
Yeah. What's your language?
What's your
the
language? What's your love language, right? I like it when you do the dishes and, do stuff around the house for me.
And
I feel really taken care
Yeah.
of when you do that, right?
Right.
Maybe some women feel that way when their husband helps. So, yeah, I think really at the end of the day, yes, divorce is really hard, really
It is.
terrible. Honestly, it should be the last resort. It really should be your last resort. I can speak from experience as a kid who had parents that split up, when I was in my preteens, and it was not pretty. They tried their best. I don't fault them. I'm not blaming them in any way, but it was awful. It was very traumatic for me, and they were trying. But it's not good for the kids. It's never going to be good for the kids
No, it's
unless
not.
you're in a highly
And then we're
abusive
just gonna
situation and you're
Yeah,
keeping them
exactly.
away from someone who's literally going to hurt them and harm them in some way. I get that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the normal marital breakdown. People don't get along. People don't like each other anymore, or whatever it is. Things come between you and you don't work it out. There's no good way for you to split that family up. There's just you can do it as amicably as you can. And I commend people who can do that. It's wonderful. It's not common.
Yeah.
I don't see it very common. Like, I see that it's very difficult and it's detrimental to the kids, period.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be a downer. So get to know yourself.
Yes.
Do your best to work through those. Work on yourself when you're in your marriage. You don't have to work on the other person. If you can work on yourself and you start showing up differently, they will automatically start responding to you in a different way because you are showing up as a different person.
Yeah.
You can do this. As a woman, if you are feeling upset, lonely, angry in your marriage and feeling any which way, work on yourself first. Find out what is this.
Fill your cup.
Yeah, fill your cup. What is it that you are truly lacking or feeling upset about? See if you can fill that up outside of the expectation that your partner has to do that for you. Just try that first. Try that first and see how that goes, right? Try to fill your cup in different ways. If he doesn't bring you flowers, buy yourself flowers. Really, really. I know a married woman whose husband does not like to do those types of things. Get her flowers, like little presents and stuff. She was upset with him for about 10 years about this. Argued with him about it. He's like, I don't see the point of this, whatever. And so finally she said, I can either really choose to be continually upset about this and trying to force him to do something that he really doesn't believe in. I know it's just flowers, but to her it was kind of like a nice thing. And she said, I'm just going to buy myself flowers when I want. I'm going to get myself the flowers and the chocolate on Valentine's Day when I want. He does other things that he feels are, helpful and showing love towards her. And that's just how he is. And that's her choice, right? Her choice was, I want to stay married. I love all these other things about him. I'm going to fill my cup and do the things for myself that, for whatever reason, he's just not down to do. And that's okay, right? So I think that at the end of the day, you're right. Get to know yourself. Do the best that you can with yourself.
100%.
First.
Yes.
First. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. We will see you next time on the show.
And again, please like, subscribe, and share.